Hello there. Time now for Back Pages tonight here on Sky Sports News, bringing you a first look at the sports stories in the morning's newspapers. Joining us are The Guardian's Jonathan Liew and The Mirror's chief football writer, John Cross. Welcome to you both, gents. We'll come to you shortly. Let's quickly run you through the back pages, starting with The Express. Their main story, as you can see there, in the nick of time, talking about Newcastle's record signing, Nick Woltermeijer. In The Telegraph, their main story, they focus on Ruben Amorim as pressure ramps up on the Manchester United manager. Amorim to hold talks on future, they say. In The Mirror, Ruben crisis talks. Also the focus there on the Manchester United manager. They also make mention of Trent Alexander-Arnold ready for Anfield reunion with Real Madrid. That's after Real Madrid draw Liverpool in the Champions League. In The Guardian, lots of focus, isn't there, on Ruben Amorim. Club figures believe Amorim may quit as tactics questioned. They also make mention of Tour de France winner Chris Froome, who breaks his back during horror crash in training. In The Time, again, Newcastle the focus. Newcastle agreed deal for £65 million striker. Conflicting reports on Manchester United and whether they will keep hold of Ruben Amorim, their manager. Here they say, we will stand by Amorim. In the Metro, nowhere to hide. In the I newspaper, we've heard reports, haven't we, of Garnacho moving away from Manchester United, going to Chelsea after they agree a fee for the forward. Could Kobbie Mainoo be on his way out as well? Yeah, lots of focus there, as you see, gents, on that record signing for Newcastle. Jonathan, Nick Woltermeijer, 6'6". What is he going to bring to this Newcastle side?
Woltermeijer is a really interesting profile of player. I think he's 6'6". They call him the 2 meter Messi in Germany because he's not despite his height, he's not a typical target man number 9. He's one of those profiles of players that he's credible with the ball at his feet. It's very hard to get the ball off him. Great hold-up play, great linking play with it brings other players into the game, and a really interesting backstory as well. You know, he went 39 Bundesliga games before scoring his first goal for Werder Bremen. Moved to Stuttgart last season. Basically, was a substitute for most of the season, and really came to life in the second half of the campaign. So it's been a really rapid rise for him. He got his first German caps under Julian Nagelsmann as well. So Newcastle have overpaid for him. I mean, that's pure and simple. I mean, that's not to say he won't be a big success, but it's hard to argue that he's worth this kind of money right now. And in fact, there's reports in the German media suggesting that the fee is actually even higher, nearer towards £80 million if you include add-ons. But he's a great character. Nagelsmann loves him. They still love him at Werder Bremen. And Stuttgart did not want to let him go. Bayern Munich came in for him 3 times this summer, probably around the 50, 55 million pound mark, and were rebuffed each other. They got nowhere. Stuttgart don't have a ready replacement for him. They were planning to start the season. So this is the sort of premium I think that you have to pay for a player of this quality and this potential. I think it's interesting to see how Newcastle use him. I think he is better and more suited to playing with someone like Wisser or Johan Strand Larsen alongside him. I don't think he's a conventional target man, but it is really interesting to see how he kind of develops.
Yeah, as you mentioned, he's drawn big money from Newcastle, hasn't he? As mentioned in the Times, Newcastle agreed deal for £65 million striker. John, will this mean, though, that Newcastle still need to add an extra striker, an extra forward, if they lose Alexander Isak to Liverpool?
Jess, I mean, the obvious question is, what happens next to Isak, isn't it?
I tried my hardest not to mention the I word for as long as I possibly could.
Sorry. But I just feel as if absolutely you're spot on. I think that basically, if you sell Isak at this stage, I do feel that you really need 2 strikers. You need 2 forwards, probably of a different profile. Johnny in many ways kind of painted a picture there of a non-conventional number 9, but also a striker in Voldemade that basically actually has qualities that Isak brings, i.e., good on the ball, kind of drifts and sort of kind of very good control. I was looking at, watching a video earlier on Sky, basically sort of kind of, you had a German expert on painting this picture in a similar way, just the way that he exploded in that second half of the season, goals and so much potential. But when you are talking this sort of price tag, if they do a Strand Larsen as well or a Wissa in the final days of the window, we've still got until Monday, sort of early evening, haven't we, until Newcastle really try and sort of kind of get that merry-go-round into action. Isak has made it so clear that he wants to go to Liverpool, that there's still enough time for that merry-go-round to, really catch light and basically carry on. And I just think that Newcastle, I think that basically they probably do need another one. Simply, I was at the game the other night, and basically they look short of striker options. They look short of options in their squad, frankly, with the squad. And if you lose someone as talented and as brilliant as Isak, and basically if Liverpool then go a little bit higher, and they will do, I think, given any sort of encouragement, then I think they're massive shoes to fill. And I think it probably requires more than just one player. I wonder whether, if you're signing a big striker, then perhaps the Wissa, who's almost sometimes a bit of a more of an inside forward or wide forward, might be a better complement. But, I do think it's going to be a crunch few days. And frankly, almost an exciting few days in this transfer window in the merry-go-round.
Yeah, I can't wait to see how it all unfolds. Jonathan, as John said there, Isak has made it very clear that he no longer wants to be a Newcastle player. Should he get his move to Liverpool as he wants, does it justify his behaviour?
I think if if it does work out for him, I think you would say, and most players, to be brutally frank, would say that the end justifies the means. It is a game. I think you see plenty of examples of football clubs who are prepared to cast aside players who they no longer want. Who new coaches come in, new regimes come in, players fall out of favour, players get injured, and this is a brutal industry. And I think we talked about leverage quite a bit, and Isak's leverage over Newcastle, over I guess the market itself, is now. It's while the window is still open. We're all going to take a different view on, I guess, the ethics of what it is he's done. But I think it's a weird place to draw your ethical line. If you think about all of the other stuff that goes on in the industry, behind closed doors, behind people's backs, it's weird to draw. I say it's weird to draw an ethical line under Isak if you're not going to draw it somewhere else in the transfer market, because this kind of, I guess, cynical, calculating sort of strategy is basically par for the course in the market.
Yeah, we're so used to seeing this type of behaviour now, aren't we? Let's turn our attentions then to Trent Alexander-Arnold, which a few of the back pages have picked up on. Let's look at the Star, because at the top of their back page, they mention, of course, the fact that Trent Alexander-Arnold will be returning to Anfield. Trent's going to cop an earful. John, do you think that Trent might get a welcome response from his former fans?
I'm not sure, Jess, to be honest. It's such a good point that Johnny makes, though, because basically, you're going from one kind of, playing the transfer game, going on strike, basically, the prior Newcastle, Alexander Isak, to someone, Trent Alexander-Arnold, who saw out his contract at Liverpool and basically left on a free, and he's still the bad guy. So, look, I do think it kind of the morals are slightly confused here, aren't they? Basically, about which way to turn. But I do think that Trent Alexander-Arnold was such a brilliant player for Liverpool, and he's such a brilliant player per se. And I just think these stories are always destined to happen in draws, aren't they? I mean, you also got, Kevin De Bruyne basically, returning for with Napoli against Man City. I mean, what great stories and really. But I do think Trent, deserves a lot of respect and credit for what he did. And I know that Liverpool fans won't necessarily agree, but I think when you take in your kind of, into the context of what's going on with Isak, I think keep everything in context, guys, and basically give him a bit of credit, give him a bit of love, for the European Cups and the Premier League title, if you don't mind. Because honestly, I completely agree with Johnny, honestly. If you are if you are wanted as a player, they basically want to give you the contract. They give you the contract, but when you're yesterday's news, you're out the door, and basically you're loaned out. You don't know quite what's happening, and so let's be realistic here. But I do think that Trent Alexander-Arnold deserves a bit of respect and a bit of love from Liverpool fans. Let's hope so.
Yeah, okay. Well, let's see if the Liverpool fans agree with you, John. Jonathan, thank you for the moment. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we'll take a look at more of the sports stories in the morning's newspapers, including this in the Metro. Nowhere to hide for Ruben Amorim. We'll look at that and reports in The Guardian that he could be set to quit. You're watching Back Pages tonight. Welcome back to The Guardian's Jonathan Liew and The Mirror's chief football writer, John Cross. I want to turn our attentions to the back of the Mirror. We're going to talk Manchester United now because their focus is very much on Ruben Amorim, the manager. Ruben crisis talks, they say, under pressure Amorim to meet United hierarchy, who will demand an instant lift for his bruised Reds. What do you make of this, Jonathan?
Yeah, we are seeing a lot of these stories. I mean, Grimsby Town was a difficult night, I think it's fair to say, for Amorim. I think certainly the mood has turned quite sharply in these first three games of the season. And if you remember, the pre-season friendlies, some of their performances, a lot of the transfer business they did, they actually went into the campaign with quite a lot of optimism. Jamie Jackson's obviously reported in our newspaper that Amorim might be thinking of quitting, or that there are people at United who fear he might be. I would be shocked. I'd be shocked if he went this early. If I don't think you give a coach like Amorim a structure like this and give him a full pre-season if you are thinking of bidding him off. And I think Amorim will certainly feel that he still has work to do. I mean, I think it's quite telling that a lot of United's match-going fans aren't quite turning on him yet. I mean, obviously the United fans on the internet are going ballistic, but that's basically what too much screen time will do to you. I mean, what is the plan if Amorim goes at this stage? What is United's plan? Another rebuild, like another new philosophy, some more new players? Drop another few hundred million on a load of new players who can play a different system. You've spent the last 10 months drilling this team to play 3-4-3. Do you scrap all that and get more new players? This is, partly this is exactly what the United cinematic universe has always demanded. It's always demanded more change, more upheaval. There's always a huge overreaction to basically everything, every decision and every game, every performance, every press conference is scrutinised. It's hyper scrutinised, and which is not to argue that Amorim's doing a good job or to defend him but I would argue that losing to Grimsby Town actually doesn't tell us a huge amount that we didn't already know about this side. They're wildly inconsistent. They have a big hole in midfield, and they get really disheartened quite early on in games. We knew all that already. So whether anything substantial has changed for United in the first 3 games of the season, apart from basically the vibes around the place, I remain to be convinced by that.
Yeah, well, as Jonathan mentioned there, what is the plan? A lot of the fans that we've spoken to here on Sky Sports News have asked the very same question. I just want to draw our attentions back to The Guardian, because you mentioned that, Jonathan. Jamie Jackson's article in The Guardian says, unrest at Old Trafford, club figures believe Amorim may quit as his tactics are questioned. John, what does this say about the authority that perhaps Ruben Amorim has within the Manchester United dressing room, if this is true? His tactics by his own players being questioned?
Well, listen, I think Jamie Jackson, one of Fleet Street's great characters, author, DJ and brilliant journalist, and really well tuned in at Old Trafford. I honestly think if the United hierarchy have watched his post-match interview, Amorim, they would be going, blimey, is this guy going to quit? Because honestly, to me, that interview was seismic. I thought his post-match interview, not watching the penalties, and there was so many things to worry me, I think, if I'm kind of the member of the United hierarchy about Ruben Amorim. I mean, this is from someone who I really thought United were going to have a very good season. They may still have a good season, but I do think there's lots to worry about. I mean, most notably, that formation. He's trying to make the formation work with players that are just not suited to it. I know it's an old chestnut, and I know he's wedded to that system, but it's his failing. It's a real weakness that he cannot adapt and change. Honestly, if you go through United's squad, you can suddenly come up with a solid back four, a much better balanced midfield in which you can definitely get the new 2 wide attackers in. You could get Šeško up top and you could get Bruno Fernandes in behind. Honestly, it's so obvious that to play a 4-2-3-1. I just can't get my head round why he is so stubborn. And to me, I think that could potentially cost him. I mean, my own colleague, David McDonnell, on the back of the Mirror is basically saying there'll be talks after Burnley to say, look, things must improve. We need to see green shoots. But, quintessentially, they are behind him and they want to give him every chance to succeed. But can you imagine the mood? And I've seen some of those interviews that you're referring to, Jess, but can you imagine the mood if they don't beat Burnley? It's one of those poisonous chalice, really, because yes, maybe on the face of it, it's a winnable game, but if you don't, then it's even worse for him, frankly. So I do think it's such a challenging time for Amorim, and he does look a man, I think, who's got lots on his plate, and he's not convincing me at the moment that all is well in his head and his belief that he can actually turn this around. He needs performances, but he also needs, I think, improvement from him, most notably, I think, in his language and his body language.
So, Jonathan, what does this mean in terms of transfers? Because we've seen that has been agreed with Chelsea for Alejandro Garnacho. There's talk, perhaps in the eye, that Mainu could follow along the lines of Garnacho and move away from United as well, all with a manager that is up in the air as to whether he stays or not.
Yeah, I mean, I think I mean, United are also say that they're not actively trying to sell Mainu, but obviously, if you're trying to bring in a midfielder, a kind of a game-changing, more athletic presence in midfield, Baleba has obviously been mentioned. Then selling an asset like Mainu, you sign someone like Baleba for 100 million or so, you amortize that over 4 or 5 years, and you fund that with selling a homegrown prospect. That is, it's what Chelsea have done so well, so effectively, and I guess it's what Jim Ratcliffe would also be open to doing. I don't know. We all know that they need that presence in midfield. That they're like, the whole virtue of that system. It doesn't really work unless you have that two in front of the back three who can cover plenty of ground, who can fill the gaps, who can create the sort of block that doesn't get you countered, which is actually exactly what United are being. They're being countered again and again by Grimsby and by other teams as well. So that is the uncertainty that is still hanging over them in the last few days of the window. It does seem weird that they didn't address that before addressing the front three, but now you basically have a big hole in the middle of the team, and they need to fix it.
Yeah, they do. Lots to ponder there at Manchester United. And Kobbie Mainoo is a player that will be hoping, I suppose, to get regular football again so that he can join the England side, regain his spot in the team. And that's where we're going to focus next, actually, because the England squad from Thomas Tuchel is announced very, very shortly. And in the back of your paper, John, in the Mirror, they have mentioned, Chris McKenna has written an article about Jack Grealish eyeing a recall for England. After he's moved to Everton, he looks like he's playing with a smile on his face again. How do you rate his chances of getting back into the England team?
Well, I guess it's a lot of it is based on, frankly, someone like Bukayo Saka being out. There's a few other injuries too, and Grealish, he's playing again. And time after time, Tuchel has drawn attention to the fact that Grealish is a player he really likes. I mean, there's no doubt about it. You couldn't pick him really last year, I don't think, simply because when he wasn't playing, how could you justify that? But this is a player of immense talent. And I think, he did provide 2 assists, didn't he? Which I think, was calculated was as many as he provided in a couple of seasons, wasn't it, for Man City? So I think that loan move to Everton will really give him opportunity to play. And that's what he needs to do, really. And I do still think a Jack Grealish who is playing, who is fit, who is sharp and focused, gets in, kind of the England squad that I would pick. And I'm sure the encouraging noises from Tuchel, who's been, effusive about his character and his personality and his playing style. I really think that, whether it's this time or next, I really feel as if, Tuchel will want Grealish in that World Cup squad next summer, and certainly in some squads before that, and so he can build up and sort of kind of build on that. I do still think that Mainoo, you touched on it there, Jess, basically, if he's playing again, I mean, this was the kid that basically, was the star of, the 23-24 season, and we broke into the Euros team. If he's playing again, he's not going to play at United, then surely he gets back into the England frame. Maybe we were guilty of a little bit of building him up too quickly, but I do think there's, interesting prospects, I think, for the England squad and sort of in England squad over the next few months, and indeed tomorrow at 12 noon it's announced, isn't it?
And Jonathan, here's an interesting prospect. As quoted in The Eye, Sam Cunningham is arguing that now perhaps is the time for James Trafford to take #1 spot for England. Can you envisage a summer at England at a World Cup where it's not Jordan Pickford as England's #1?
No, I mean, Pickford's basically been part of the furniture really since 2018. I think obviously England will have to move on from Pickford eventually. I haven't seen a big decline in form for club or country that I think would precipitate that. Nor have I seen as brilliant as Trafford was in the Championship last season. I haven't seen enough of a challenge to deny him that slot. I think Trafford is. This is pending Donnarumma's arrival, I guess. If he gets a run of games for Manchester City, if he has a decent season, I think you can start talking about him in those sorts of terms. But it's way too soon, and I don't think Tuchel is the sort of manager who's going to be taking those sorts of gambles now in a World Cup year.
Yeah, John, what do you think?
Yeah, I tell you what, set Trafford back on Saturday was that awful pass out from the back. Really, listen, everyone wants to play out from the back, but the one thing you cannot do as a goalkeeper is play a straight pass out. It gets intercepted every time. Honestly, it's cardinal sin. And look, I think Pickford never lets England down. I think Trafford's got major potential. I agree with Johnny. Really, basically, I don't think he's quite ready yet, and I think Pickford is still reliable. But I do think within 2 years, Trafford's got to be challenging. I think for the #1 spot.
OK, Jonathan, away from the football, I just want to bring our attentions back to your newspaper, The Guardian, where Sean Ingle has written about Chris Froome. And we all, obviously, of course, want to send our best wishes to Chris after his horror crash in training. Airlifted to hospital after suffering a collapsed lung, breaking his back and 5 ribs. A serious crash, Jonathan. It just goes to show just how scary and how dangerous cycling can actually be.
Level for a good 3 or 4 years now, ever since he joined as well Premier Tech. Technically, he isn't as good a rider as I think he was during his heyday. But I think during those years at Team Sky, I think we do still underrate him. A little bit. He came in the aftermath of the Bradley Wiggins, Team Sky loving, the Team GB loving, and maybe he didn't quite get his due. So I think he's obviously not been, at the top level for quite a few years now.
Yeah. This
might be the end for him, and it's probably a good time to pay tribute.
Yeah, Jonathan, thank you very much. Jonathan Liu from The Guardian and John Cross from The Mirror. Thank you for your thoughts. If you missed any of the show, there's another chance to see Back Pages tonight at 1:30. Also available as a podcast. Just go to wherever you get your podcasts from. Coming next, more on Newcastle's record